We are talking today about 4 workplace behaviors that can actually predict, when they're present, the demise, the breakdown, and the ruined relationships that exist in the workplace with great accuracy. Hey guys, my name is Tammy and I am with Relationship Revolution, and we run a program called Conquer Conflict. And from there I wanted to share with you some information that I share with my students about the 4 Horsemen and how to watch for their presence in the workplace. Now, maybe you've heard of the 4 Horsemen before, but we're going to take a step back and just kind of bring you up to speed. If you haven't heard about them, what are they and why do they matter? So Dr. John Gottman, years ago, discovered that there's these 4 behaviors that, when present, will be quite predictive of the relationship failing. And they were known as the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse. That sounds bad. So stay tuned to the end of this video because I have something that I'd like to share with you that will help you to reduce the risk of the horsemen even stepping in to your workplace. Now, the research initially dealt with married couples, and I can tell you from a personal experience, back many years ago when my husband and I were first married, we'd moved, new baby, I didn't have work. We were in counseling, and I remember our counselor saying that there were 3 of those 4 horsemen present, and she didn't have much faith for our relationship. But that's a story for another day, and yes, we are still married. Now, what Talent Smart has done is they've taken the theory and the work of Dr. Gottman around the 4 horsemen, and they have studied 1 million different relationships at the workplace to see if this theory also applies. Shocker! We spend more time at work, so why wouldn't workplace relationships suffer if the 4 horsemen are present? Let's talk about the 4 horsemen next. So the whole thing around the 4 horsemen has to deal with the way conflict is being managed within relationships. And no surprise, there's conflict in our marriages and in our interpersonal relationships, but also in the workplace. But what's more important is how the conflict is resolved. It doesn't matter how much conflict there is, but it's more about the interaction and the resolution of conflict to move forward. And the research by Dr. Gottman says that if the presence of the 4 horsemen exists, that's a sign that conflict is not being dealt with in a constructive and productive manner to move the relationship forward. Now, horseman number 1 is criticism. Now, criticism in itself is not necessarily always bad. Criticism is meant sometimes in a positive way to provide feedback and instruction to improve one's performance. Criticism that becomes negative typically focuses on the attributes and the behaviors or the appearance of an individual. Whereas if you want to look at the positive criticism, you might say, listen, here's what I've noticed is every time that we have to stay overtime, your attitude drops and you become really negative and you start to say bad things about the company. I think it might be time to reshape some of those. That would be a criticism in order to help improve somebody. So when the negative side of criticism exists in your relationship, that's one of the horsemen that indicates problems are not being dealt with. So if you've ever been criticized at work, let me know in the chat box below, and what was the best way that you managed it in order to resolve the conflict and kind of stop that negative pattern from even starting. I'd love to hear from you to see what strategies you have already come across to help you navigate criticism in the workplace, because it's probably the most common. Now, the second horseman to watch out for is what we call contempt. This is an open and outward disrespect for somebody and disregard. You might notice it with people rolling their eyes and sighing when you talk, or being more direct with insults. Now, contempt usually is as a result of some long-standing negative feelings that you have towards somebody. It's quite deeply rooted in there. And we start to speak in ways that are demeaning and belittling to another person. Maybe, for example, you say, oh, I learned how to do math a long time ago. When are you ever going to learn? It's really an attack of someone's sense of self, and it can be quite dangerous and obviously not going to be working towards resolving workplace conflict. Because let's be real, who wants to work with somebody who disregards me and disrespects me so much that they're disgusted by me? It's not somebody I'm likely to have a conversation with. And now here's the real danger. Contempt is one of the most poisonous behaviors to exist in a relationship, according to Dr. Gottman's research. And it will destroy your psychological, your physical, and your emotional health and well-being. Now, the third horseman is defensiveness. Defensiveness keeps us away from resolving conflict because it's looking at causing another issue with somebody else. There's a lack of responsibility. There's a lot of making excuses as to why things can't happen or won't happen. And what they find is it really only serves to accelerate the tensions and the anxiety that's already in the relationship, because it's preventing one person from finding a resolution and moving forward because the other person is stuck. Now listen, we have all felt defensive from time to time, so let me know in the chat box below if your defensive reactions are causing you troubles in the workplace. Now, as defensiveness is often the response to criticism, contempt can often elicit the response of stonewalling, and that's the fourth horseman, is stonewalling. This is where they are flooded psychologically, they don't know how to deal with the situation, they're feeling overwhelmed, and so they shut down, they withdraw, they stop communicating, and the lines of communication are halted. So rather than addressing situations, this tuning out pattern can cause the other person to feel defensive and angry and frustrated, and as you can tell, that's not going to resolve the issues in the workplace. Now, being able to identify the presence of these four horsemen is critical in order to adapt strategies to overcome them. Now, I did say that the presence of these four horsemen in a relationship is predictive of the relationship becoming dissolved. And you want to know just how accurate this is? 93% of the time, the relationship will end. Now, just because those four horsemen are present and there's a 93% accuracy in its prediction of the demise of your relationship, doesn't mean that it's doomed. All right, so listen, if you are struggling with, what do I say when these moments happen? Like, I know I need to say something because this doesn't feel good. I don't want this. Well, I'm going to put in the description box below for you. There is a free download you can get. It's called the Top 10 Safe Conversation Starters. And it comes from the research where they have identified the top 10 behaviors that are most offensive in the workplace, from nonverbal behaviors such as sighing and rolling your eyes to sabotage and personal attacks. And it gives you a response that is non-threatening, levels the playing ground, and is very clear as to what you need from them. So head on into the description box and download that today, and it's going to help you get started in removing the risk of those horsemen even being present to begin with. Thanks for watching. Now, if you want to subscribe, give me a thumbs up. That will help me know that this content has been helpful for you as well. And if you're looking to join a group, you can head on over to our Facebook group, Conquer Conflict. I'll put the link below. And from there, you can also access information about our masterclass that we run to help you create a pathway for success in your relationships.